Uh,
What's up, Mike?
yeah, so I want to talk about that, which we just talked about, but I also want to talk about the workout I just did too, which we also talked about. But I don't know if you want to start or if you want me to start. Do you want me to start? Or you want to start?
Let me just go through my fit quest then to get that out of the way. I don't have too many updates this
Okay.
week.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think, okay, where I left off last time we talked, I was just doing my yoga and daily walks.
Hmm.
That's been pretty awesome. I took the next step up, and I think I texted you about this, but we didn't discuss it on FitQuest.
Hmm.
And so I'm keeping yoga. I love it. To be honest, I'm over 90 days now of yoga. I've never felt better in my life. All my training, I've never felt stronger. My weight is at a good weight. Like I told you, I was afraid to step on a scale. I finally stepped on a scale and my weight is where I want it to be. I want to knock on wood for this because my back and hip pain is so much lower than it has been in forever. I've been playing a ton of golf and still not very much pain. That's awesome about yoga. I'm continuing my yoga and my walks, but my walks are changing a little bit. One of my walks is a 20-pound ruck, just adding a 20-pound backpack.
You really
To
like rucking, I feel like you enjoy it, right?
yeah, oh, absolutely. Because for me, it's on the easier side of exercise, but it can certainly be very hard to maintain posture and a tight core while you're doing it. For me, I'm all about trying to figure out my lowest motivation, what's the hardest thing I can do.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's just increasing my walking with a backpack, 20 pounds and then 40 pounds. People say you might not build a lot of muscle or whatever, and that might be true, but I feel like my shoulders have gotten fairly strong and my upper rhomboids because it's a lot about posture and holding yourself up. And with the core work between yoga and rucking, if it's like a core day in yoga and then I go do my 20-pound ruck, I feel it in my stomach the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm trying to be aware of contracting my core while I'm walking. This is why I love rucking and things like that, because you just never know what you're going to do. 2 days ago, I went to an amusement park with the kids. It was a blast. There was an instance where we were leaving the park and sprinting in pouring rain. I had a 50-pound kid
Right.
in my arms and just like sprinting as hard as you can. And this is why I like to do rucks and stuff because I feel like you're not going to do a barbell bench press in real life, almost ever,
My
right?
kids like me to press them while I'm lying on the ground.
So, so I was just holding him. Now he wasn't on my back at this point, but there was a lot of times during the day when he was on my back. It's just a monkey ruck, basically, sprinting with a kid at
Mhm.
full speed. And like halfway at the beginning, I was just worried about the water, and then halfway through, I was thinking about my body and my core. I was like, this is extremely hard to run at full speed with 50 pounds in your arm and maintain a core because I was starting to really lean, and I was like, oh, this might start hurting my back. And I was like, oh, let's tighten up and really thought about that. I feel like my rucking and walks, because I did 3 months of rucking while we went on our break for FitQuest this year, carried over really well. I was
I love being able to see carryover from workouts, honestly. I think that's so important for people. I try and ask them about where is this going to carry over in different words. I love when somebody has a goal and then they see that goal transfer into that strength goal transfer into real life, if that makes sense. That's one of my
absolutely,
favorites. Yeah,
and
I think that's great for dad strength too. What kind of dad do you want to be? You want to be the kind of dad who's, oh no, it's raining. Here,
exactly.
jump in my arms.
Exactly. Dude, we crushed it. My kids were great out there in the rain. I know I'm a little off track here on the Fit Quest, but they were awesome in the rain. They
Yeah,
walked, we were outside for 10 hours. So that sprint was after 10 hours of walking
yeah,
and
right.
carrying them too. And so I felt great after it, and the kids loved it. The kids enjoyed it, and it was a really good time. And so back to my Fit Quest. I added 1 day of lifting, but not very much lifting. This is a lift out of your playbook. I'm just doing a little bit of kettlebell swing with a press, pretty low reps. I'm keeping it 3 to 5,
Yep.
followed by some kettlebell, what do you call it? Overhead carries, and then
Mhm.
rack carries and suitcase carries. Oh, waiter carries is the
Yeah.
carry. I guess there's a million names for every exercise, right?
Some kind of carry, multiple kinds of carry,
Multiple.
swing, press.
And that's it. Just a workout after my yoga.
Okay.
And so I've been starting with my lowest kettlebell, which is really light, like 15 pounds for the warm up, and then moving up to 50. So like 15, 25, 35, up to 50. And then sometimes will go down and do one, or sometimes I'll be like, I'm tired and stop. So a pyramid scheme with that,
Mhm.
and then start doing that whole routine: swing, press, carry, swing, press, carry,
Once a week.
once a week. Basically, I'm working out 6 days a week, 6 days of yoga, 1 day of strength training, 2 days of rucking, and then walking on the other days. And
Yep.
so it's just adding a little bit more. I am golfing twice a week still.
Mhm.
One thing is interesting is that if you don't plan your golf and it lands on the day that I do kettlebell swings and the carries,
Yeah.
my core is a little weak at golf, and that makes me hesitate a little bit about playing just because my main focus is to not get injured. Now,
Right.
I'm not saying I will get injured. I feel great and all that, and you're definitely allowed to work out before you play golf, but I just feel it a little bit, it's just a little bit weaker. So
You've already been taxed for the day.
I just try and not do it, but my golf has landed on that day before and I felt weak. Because sometimes I just don't know when I'm going to go play. But I think that's part of the fit quest is that sometimes you overextend yourself a little bit. And
Mhm.
then the following day, I would just maybe take it. I could just, that's when I have the room to maybe not do yoga and just do my walk, or maybe do a little yoga and not the walk. Definitely
Yep.
no weights.
Yeah, people just want to remember that they have ranges. Like some weeks you're going to do at the bottom range of the recommended, and other weeks you're going to do at the top range of the recommended.
I like that. And just really feel your body. You better, even better than your coach, I think. Now, I think on the opposite end, your coach might know you a little bit more, like where to push you because they can see other things.
Coaches
But I
can
think,
usually see the macro a little bit more, and clients see the micro a little bit
right.
more.
I like that.
Ooh, your kettlebell workout reminded me of something. Have you ever heard of why? I don't know if this is true or not. It could just be like meathead myth. But have you ever heard of one of the reasons why they chose the weights they chose for kettlebells? Like, and it's in poods in Russian. Like,
No, but
I think a pood is supposed to represent a small child.
hmm.
In the original Russian kettlebell training, the idea was a simple implement that didn't cost a lot, like a ball of iron with a handle on it, that you could train the population to grab like a small child or 35 pounds worth of stuff and get out, basically, and move it dynamically. So, like, the female standard was 1 pood, and I think the male standard was like 1.5 or 2 pood, basically, and being able to do all the standard exercises like the swing, the clean, the press, all that, squat, to be
That
able to
makes
manipulate a small child in times of invasion or war.
that's interesting if that's all true, Mike.
I know, right? It's a good story, isn't it?
It makes sense because things like swings are more relatable to your life than some other exercises in the gym. How often are you swinging your kid up to grab them, and then if they want to go up, you push them up? It really
Yeah,
relates.
dynamic power through the hips and core. I like swings a lot for that reason too. And it's
Yeah,
hard to replicate it. You can do hip thrusts or bridges, but it's not exactly the same.
I agree. But yeah, man, that's pretty much my fit quest.
That's pretty comprehensive. It's funny because it doesn't feel that hard to you. It feels pretty smooth, right?
Yeah.
But that's just because you've had multiple things all get to a stable level for you. And you're just manipulating little pieces of it depending on your awareness and how you feel now.
Yep, really trying to maintain the balance, stay in the middle of the path. as
Mhm.
I like to say a lot.
Golden
But
path. The golden path. Is this Dune?
the
Talking about Dune.
maybe
Yes.
there'll be another podcast in a few years about that.
Okay.
But
So that's a good path, though. Yes, a good walking of the path. Good
yeah,
rucking. You're rucking through the path right now, practically.
and man, I read the Story Brand book by Donald
Yeah.
Miller, which
Yeah.
which you recommended on my walks while I'm reading The Hero with a
Really big.
Thousand Faces.
Yeah.
And so those two books really talk about what a good story is about, or at least the pieces of the story that show up throughout history. That really helps along with your fit quest, which we've talked about before, be your own hero's journey, right?
Yeah, that's a big reason why we do the Fit Quest name, right? Because I think we both understand that people have to treat their health interventions like a hero's journey. We see that hero's journey manifest when we train our clients over a longer period of time. If things are going well, hopefully.
Or if they're not going well, you can see where they fall off
Yeah.
and what you can do in the future to prevent those fall offs with different kind of behavior types.
Hmm.
And
And Story Brand talks a lot about being a good guide. Like you're not the hero, you're the guide.
that makes a lot of sense.
And as a coach, you're supposed to be a good guide, I feel like.
Yeah, and how many times do you see people posting online like them jacked and be like, "Hey, be like me." Is that being a guide? Maybe a little bit, but really all of our clients are the ones who are trying to do it, not us. We need to just guide in our best abilities whoever our client is to their path, not our path.
Speaking of,
Go ahead.
I was guiding some people through a wellness presentation this week,
Oh,
and it affected my Fit Quest in a couple ways. One, because we have a wellness challenge going on right now that we're trying to guide people through, and it's our first one through our app. So
oh,
I'm trying to check in for all the habits. And then I was going to a location to talk about back health, actually, which was, and one of the things that helps a lot with back health is walking. And while I'm doing the wellness challenge for our current group, one of the things you have to do is go out on a walk to get points for the wellness challenge.
okay.
So I felt like I did three different things all in one short period of time. It was amazing this week. I had one day where I got multiple wellness challenge objectives done for multiple wellness challenges, and I got to work out at the same time. So I was thinking while I was doing it about how productively amazing I felt that day.
Just everything coming together at once.
I was talking about walking. We did a walk. I got points for the wellness challenge that we were in. I posted pictures about the wellness challenge at the wellness presentation that I was at. I knew I was going to talk about this on the Fit Quest.
That's awesome. Now, do you want to talk about the wellness challenge? What's going on with that, or what kind of details do you want to share or not share?
Yeah. So this is actually through our out group. We thought one of the things we want to do is we were always trying to add value to our group, even though it's a free service. One of the things we've been thinking about for a while is using EverFit for our app,
Yep.
basically, on our online coaching to do things like a habit challenge where people can check in for their challenges and then have a look at a leaderboard and have a forum and interact and do all that. And we hadn't done it yet. So we were like, okay, we're a little afraid of doing this because we don't want to put a hardcore wellness contract into something that we haven't really tested out that much. So we got our out friends and family to jump in on it, and we're testing it out. And it's just $5 for everybody to get in. There's prizes at the end, and it's been
Ooh,
going really well. So it's been exciting to get that working and going. And I'm probably going to use it in future wellness programs because of how well it's going. We're at the end of our second week right now, so we're almost at the halfway point.
that's
But
awesome. I loved how the Everfit app looked, and I'm glad you are you using the scoreboard and everything.
and for a while, I've known that it's been there, and I'm like, I really want to use this, but I can't get all the pieces together just yet, and I don't want to pitch it to my current wellness programs because I don't want to test it with them. So I was talking to Jazz, and we came up with doing it through our out group. I was like, that's perfect. We're
Yeah.
doing that, and that's been great because Jazz is learning how to administer a wellness program as well. which is really nice. I know how to do it, but I am very reactive and relying on my previous knowledge versus organized, basically.
That's why we have wives, because they organize our lives a little bit better.
So happy. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. So that's been really exciting. I've been going on walks more throughout the week because that's one of the things we get points more. And because of that, I've been drinking more water throughout the week because that's one of the things we get points for. And then the other one is doing out exercise. And I've been doing I've mostly squats, honestly. I've been really wanted to squat more just for like my leg health feels better when I squat. And I had gotten a little bit out of the routine of movement snacks lately. I've been working out more often, so I haven't been doing the movement snacks as much.
Yeah.
But since I've had a transition from my old program to this current program where I'm not working out as much, the movement snacks I've needed to put them back in, and this wellness challenge has actually helped me put the movement snacks back in.
It's always good to have a little bit of regiment there, a little bit of a plan to follow. I
Yeah,
know.
like a template or like a is the foundation doesn't sound right, but I'm thinking of like a frame. Like you need some borders and some rules and some structure. I need structure. It sounds like a AA meeting. Hi, my name is Mike and I need structure.
We crave structure, right?
Yeah, and I'm a agent of chaos, honestly, so I need even more.
Now, okay, have I have some questions about your challenge. Now, you've done a few challenges with people.
Hmm.
Now, has anybody ever come to you and said like walking or anything like that kind of starts affecting them a little bit? Like, because like for us, walking is like the lowest barrier of entry for me. That's my easiest day. I'll go for a walk. But a lot of people are even, a lot of people might go on walks and their hip hurts, or they might go on walks and their knee hurts, or something like that. Now, do
Hmm.
you get that sometimes? And what do you do from there for them when that kind of stuff happens? Because I feel like that's more common as we get a little bit older.
Yeah, I do get that. First thought is like marching in place, honestly.
And what
Uh,
do people focus on, like when marching in place?
so opposite arm, I like cross crawl pattern is what it's called.
Hmm.
Opposite arm to opposite leg marching. So I tap as I raise my right knee up, I tap my left hand on my right knee, and as I raise my left knee up, I tap my right hand to my left knee.
So what's that teaching you for them to go back out on walks?
It's a good marching pattern, even in place marching pattern, is going to do a bunch. Especially, I like that tapping because we're getting a little bit of biofeedback for your left brain and right brain to coordinate with each other a little
Hmm.
bit more. So that's one. The other one is in place. A lot of times, it can be easier to stabilize, and a lot of the issues we have are stabilization issues when it comes to pain and walking patterns. Another thing is you can pick a piece of ground that is more comfortable for you to be walking or marching in place on versus the change of terrain that usually messes with people as well. Another thing is since you're not moving, you can work on your balance a lot more easily because a lot of times the balance affects things, the terrain affects things, the visual environment can even affect things, honestly. Like if somebody when people get older, they have sight issues so they can't see as far, so their
Okay.
ability to focus far enough away on the area that they're walking to is not good enough, so their balance actually gets affected even more and their proprioception gets affected even more because they can't keep their eyes on something in front of them far enough away that it'll help them actually focus their movement pattern, which is a longer story.
I was going to ask you, does that relate to like their gait, or is that something different?
It could be related to their gait. It could be related to I tend to lock my knee on one side when I walk. It could be like, oh, I have one person who doesn't have a big toe, for example.
Or like an old injury or something in one leg
Yeah.
could affect how you're walking a little bit.
Yeah. Even if marching's really hard, we look at biking, something like that. If we're in a gym environment, see if we can get you on a bike. Swimming is nice. A lot of the other things require more equipment, honestly. And then yeah, squats. You can't. We see if we can do squats, see if we can do squats with help.
Yeah, dude, I love marching. So I know we talk about marching like it's not much, but if you do a really slow march and you try and stay as stable as possible, that is a serious ab workout, especially if you wanted to add a kettlebell or anything like that, and you're
Mhm.
doing like a slow march,
Yeah,
you
you
can.
can progress and regress march patterns really nicely too. Like you can make them easy or you can make them really hard. And so when people get better with marching patterns, it'll transfer real quickly to walking patterns. Because sometimes I can make that march much harder than I can make a walk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting. Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I love marching. Yeah, and go ask somebody who did like marching band if marching's easy. They'll tell you about all the grueling marching band practices that they hated.
I caught my 4-year-old the other day doing these nice high step marches walking around because he's been watching me do that from time to time. I love this.
Yeah, dude, and especially getting those knees high and like teaching them to get those knees high. It's such a simple like pattern that you wouldn't think that much of, but man, people suck at it if they don't get it,
Right?
honestly. And
Right.
it affects your gait a lot if you're not able to get into it too. Like I got so much faster once I figured that out. I feel like Tom Brady a little bit, honestly. You know
Just,
that whole story about Tom Brady getting one of the slowest times at the NFL Combine?
no, tell me about it.
So Tom Brady got a horrible time at the NFL Combine. One of the reasons why he got picked so low by the Patriots and why it was such a Cinderella story is because his athleticism just looked so crappy. Basically, he was coming out of a good school, but he didn't have a lot of like major credentials, and his athleticism and his speed was due. But he
He added a
recently,
lot of yoga.
what?
He added a lot of yoga to his
I
routine.
wonder. I'm sure you might have. I know he got much more serious with his strength and conditioning, honestly, and overall, yeah, movement and injury prevention and all that. And he recently, I don't know, like within the last 4 or 5 years, around the time right before he was retiring, he did the 40-yard dash again and he beat his old time.
That's,
And that
I
was like
hope so.
15 years later or something like that.
Everything's come so far. I just started a new certification, actually, the Performance Enhancement Specialist through NASM. They just
Mhm.
released a new one. And I didn't realize how many people are a part of like big sports organizations for athletes. Like every athlete has at least like 10 different levels of I would say trainer, but different types of trainers and coaches for the sport and coaches for like exercise, coaches for the mental game, all sorts of stuff. So as long as an athlete doesn't get hurt, I wouldn't see any reason why every athlete shouldn't improve over their 10 years or 15 years in the sport.
It's because we're learning so much. Yeah. Yeah. But if they're doing the things they need to do, I would say. Yeah. Which is probably why you won't see it that often. But it's also why we see Olympic records continue to get broken because the ones at the top level are doing all the things. And then they got the genetic lottery and whatnot.
Exactly. Have you watched any of the Olympics?
Yeah, dude. Of course, I watched rugby and wrestling because I did rugby and wrestling. And
Right.
the women's rugby team medaled for the first time ever. And I love watching heavyweight wrestling. And did you hear about the Cuban heavyweight wrestler?
No, what happened?
First Olympian to win 5 golds in a row.
Wow.
And not just in a row, but 5 golds at 5 separate events ever.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's really
Isn't that
good.
nuts? And this last Olympics, he didn't even compete between Tokyo and this one. He just trained because he knew it was going to be his last one and he knew it was beyond what anybody else has done before. So he just trained for 4 years from Tokyo to this one. And
Hmm.
yeah, 41 years old, big 130 kilogram, aka like 270 pound Cuban monster. Yeah. So that was cool. That was fun watching Greco-Roman. How about you? Did you see any fun stuff?
I just watched the golf. The last day. where Scotty Scheffler came back, I think 9 strokes to take the goal. He was in like fifth place or something like that, and he shot a 62, I think, on the last day, which is really good. And a couple other things had to happen, like with a couple other
Other
people.
people messed up. Yep.
Other people messed up like right at the end. So it was super exciting, like the last 4 holes. It was really awesome to watch. Glad Scotty Scheffler was able to win because that was a lot of fun. But besides that, I watched a little bit of surfing. I watched gymnastics with my daughter and things like
Yeah, I watched
that.
gymnastics with Xena. Yep.
Yeah. Did she like it?
Oh yeah, she loves watching it. Yeah. We've read
That's
about Simone Biles too and watched videos on Simone Biles. So
cool.
she's
Cool.
all.
All right. Is there anything particular you want to talk about today besides what we've been getting into?
Let's see. Let's see. I was looking at our previous conversation, and there was a couple of things, but I have no clue right now.
I have been getting when I take the kids out golfing with my wife I've been getting stressed out. So I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old I've talked about before.
What you feel like you can't focus as well on your technique or your swing when your kids are running around in the background and screaming? What? Why
Oh
not?
man. That's only part of it, man.
That's the
But
only
yeah,
part of it? Okay.
yeah, dude.
They
I'm in
haven't
the
had lunch yet. Everybody's hot. You need water. And somebody has to go to the bathroom.
Oh my gosh. Exactly. You're trying to Okay, I love going out with my kids, but everything you said, exactly.
You
That's
leave
what
my club on the last tee. Oh, now we gotta go back to the last tee and get my club.
and it's like smaller things like it's like my kids were near a lake and I was putting and all I could think in my head was that they were just gonna go jump in the lake after a fish or something like that. And so I was just like, I can't even putt. I had to go over there. So I had to I wrote myself a list of rules so that I can read them before I go play so that the next time I can
If this, then that.
pretty much, like just so that I don't get in my own head, because obviously it's not my kid's fault, it's my fault.
Oh yeah, the reaction is purely yours. Yeah,
Yeah. So
golf is great for this and horrible for this all at the same time. I feel like
yeah, and I know, and so I'm
maybe
just
if it was less expensive, it would be better for.
and so I had to write myself a set of rules so that I can get my kids out there, so I can be a good dad and show them a
Mhm.
good time because it is stressful. And if there's any other dads that have that same experience, let me know. But I
I
had
used
to
to be that kid. I used to be that kid, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I would go on the golf trips with my dad.
Were
Most of
you
the time, I wasn't that kid, but every once in a while, I was that kid.
and I don't want to have to yell at them or anything like that, and because that's just not what I like to do at all. But when you yourself get into like fight or flight mode, then it's hard to take care of kids who themselves might be getting into fight or flight mode. And so I had to write myself some rules. I read them every time now before I go play with the kids. And so that was just a little mental fitness note I had for today.
Yeah,
I'm all about writing just like little reminders to myself because I read so much stuff out there. And sometimes when you get out in the field and you're in battle or whatever you want to call it, like
yeah.
all that stuff goes out of your mind. But I just have little
Field of
reminders for
play,
myself.
kind of in the field of play versus out of the field of play.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so that was my little thing for today. Just make some notes for yourself, maybe write it on the scorecard before you play with your kids, breathe or whatever you want, whatever is your reminder. It really helped me.
I like that. I like that. Very nice. Very nice. It's very apt to do the same thing, honestly, but I don't always write it down. Sometimes I'll just mark myself up in some way, or I'll wear something to remind me if that makes sense.
Okay.
Certain
Whatever you like.
mantras that I'm trying to repeat through the day. Yeah.
I like it.
No. Oh, I know what it was I wanted to talk to you about. So, one of the things I've been talking to people about lately is the difference between real food and processed food.
Okay. I like it. I think your question on social media wasn't it like what's the difference between food and a food product, right?
Yes, food in a food product was what I posted on social media. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
What kind of feedback did you get, or what did you think about?
yeah. So I got a lot. I got a lot of good feedback, honestly, which
All
was
right.
fun. And you probably didn't even see all the feedback I got because I cross posted this to other pages as well,
Okay.
and I got some fun feedback on that one as well. So I was pulling some of them up, and if I can find them, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what some of the answers were too. But food is what you eat. A food product is what you poop.
I guess that is a product of your food.
I'm gonna start with that one. I don't know exactly where the line is, but Doritos is a product and whole broccoli is a food. Snickers is a product. Hummus is food. Bread can be food if it's all whole grains and such. Cheez-Its is a product. Ritz crackers equals product. Baked potato equals food.
Yeah, yeah, I would say most of those are fairly
Is hummus
accurate.
though? Hummus is the one that I don't completely agree with on that one. Is hummus one? Is hummus a
The
food? Because it's ground up chickpeas with seasoning and herbalized herbs.
if you make it, is it a food, or it's definitely
Food or
closer
a food product if you make it. If you make frozen pizza, it's still a food product, I would say.
to if you put together the ingredients of a frozen pizza, though.
Put together how much?
Right. So that's
Did you
interesting.
husk the wheat?
I
Did
would
you?
say if you combine the food, then it becomes a food product. Is a salad a food product? What about a salad? You have lettuce, tomato, onions, broccoli, put it in a bowl. Does it become a food product then?
Close to it, I would say.
Or is this just stupid semantics?
Food product, a bad thing is what I really want to ask people. Because most people will say, yes, it's the devil. Kill it now. But they'll still
Well,
be like eating fruit product as they say it.
the more you, it's just a little bit of a food product that is just minimally processed, I think is fine. It comes down to balance. But yeah, I think the basic thing is if the food comes from the earth and you don't have to do much processing to it, then I think that's food. And then a food product is just anything that has to be more than minimally processed.
Okay. And is a food product a bad thing?
I don't know. What's bad?
Nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it.
Sure, exactly. If something is if my general rule is if I look on the ingredients and it's more than a couple ingredients, then I try and pick something different.
Okay.
That's just my general rule. But
Like
I
a
also,
rule of thumb, I think a rule of thumb overall, which like is a general rule, right? Like you use it most of the time, but you don't use it all the time. And there are multiple exceptions you can think of if you take a minute, right?
yeah, and I don't play the perfect game at all. And
I
so,
think
but if,
so a good rule of thumb would be to eat more things that are like food and less things that are like food products.
yes, I would say that would be a good rule.
Okay. But not exactly that food products are bad and that all food is good.
I'm sure if you eat 10 potatoes like in a sitting, your belly's not going to feel good.
Yeah, and even just baked potato with butter on it, that still seems like food to me. That doesn't seem like food product, but you eat a lot of baked potatoes with butter on it. Or French fries. Is French fries food or food product? What if I bake some French fries?
Exactly. If you make French fries from that same potato
You know?
and
But
you just cut up your potato and stick it in the air fryer, put some butter on it,
yeah.
then I think it's fine. But if
But I
you
could still overdo it with that, especially if I put sauce with it. If I put some Chick-fil-A sauce with those air fried potato fries, I
Sure.
could.
It depends on how clean you're eating and what your exact goal is, right? I think that's what all this comes down to. If your goal is to have a six pack of abs, then you should probably stay away as much as you can instead of 80% food, 20% food product, and you want a six pack of abs, you want 98% food and 2% food product. And then you could argue if you're training for a marathon or you're lifting 6 days a week, you could argue that you might slide that a little bit, but I think if your goals are more like longevity or heart health or more along the lines of health rather than the classic goals of fat loss, aesthetics, and things like that, then
Mhm.
you want to stay as close as possible to food. Because
Right. And as close as possible is the way I like to say it too.
how many trainers do you know who immediately recommend a protein shake to people? And I've been in that boat too. But if you read the ingredients on almost any protein, there's 50 ingredients in it. And should you have that? Depends on your goal. If you're trying to get insanely huge muscles, then to probably do some weird things to be able to get there. But what I've realized over the years is my heart is important and things like that are more important than what my muscles look like. The less amount of fat on my body is good. That doesn't mean I don't eat ice cream and stuff like that.
Right.
I've been really thinking that. So I got before I met you, Mike, I had a philosophy
Life was
podcast.
nice, Mike. And then
I had a philosophy podcast, and I realized that as a trainer, I was one thing. And then when philosophy and whatnot came into my life, exercise and became a completely different thing. And I think when you really think about everything you want out of your life, you sometimes, I always say, you got to eat that cookie, you got to eat that piece of cake. One thing I'm doing right now to balance this out is that I really have been really good with my sweets since the beginning of the past few months, and I've only been doing sweets on birthdays because
like that.
I don't want to be the guy who goes to somebody's birthday and they hand me a piece of cake and I'm like, oh no, I don't want to eat cake. Like, how many people I've done that before, right? If I'm on a quote unquote diet. But I, that part of me, I would rather have that
Like
piece of cake with my friends and family and enjoy the day.
you don't want to be thinking about that. You don't want what comes with that, the package that comes with that whole experience. You want that experience to be the way you know it can be, and you know there's a way to make that work with your lifestyle.
Exactly. And there's no way that cake is not a food product. Of course, it's a food product.
I'm so glad I brought this up because I can't say this in a comment section. Like you
Mhm.
can't express all this in a comment section. So sometimes I'll drop like questions like this and then I'll be like, man, I'd like to reply to all these, but it's going to take me so long to get my point across. So I'm thinking I might ask more questions like this. If you're listening, be ready. But I like being able to ask questions like this and then talk about it for this exact reason because I think it needs to be hashed out. And I think, for example, I don't think a food product is a horrible thing, but when I ask a question like that, people think they frame a food product as a horrible thing.
Right. If you're on a long drive, if you're traveling and you didn't plan well and you didn't pack a lunch or whatever, and you stop at the gas station, do you grab the protein bar, a nice Cliff Builder bar, which
Mm-hmm.
is quote unquote might be the healthiest thing at a gas station, but
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the ingredients, there's 50 ingredients on it. And so is it healthy? That's like I hate that question. I hate that. Is something healthy? There's no right answer there. Like that, there's so many levels of health.
And it's like now, at what time, when,
Right.
how, why, who, what.
Okay, but so that's why we love doing these podcasts. But when you're on social media, you have to say something, right?
Yes.
You have to make a statement or
I
people
just
will
ask further questions a lot of times because I think that's great because then it shows the post more. Basically, remember I said like agent of chaos earlier? I'm sorry, not sorry.
But that's marketing 101. This is the bit one of the biggest problems in the world is exactly what we're talking about. How people communicate online is statements to get attention,
Yep.
not necessarily.
There are questions that I don't actually answer the question. Question circles. Speaking of circles.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, you want to hear how I thought of it? You got a little bit of time?
Yeah, I have a few minutes, no problem. Whenever you're ready, we can end.
Okay. I just thought you would think this was interesting. I was listening to Sad Guru talk about soil quality and why soil is so important and why he's on this quest around the world to improve the quality of topsoil because it's degrading at a rapid rate and we're going to have some issues very soon and we're already noticing issues now intergenerationally, which is something that I've been thinking about for a while ever since I
Okay.
started to have like gluten sensitivity issues and all that and dairy issues and all.
Interesting. What'd you learn?
I just reinforced things, honestly. There was a lot of learning, but two things that popped up the most was one, the things that happen to don't have to affect how you feel about the situation. That's more about how you feel about the situation. Your golf example earlier in the kids, which was a really good reminder. And it helps to be reminded of that often, especially as a parent who's trying to get shit done and be a nice parent, basically at the same time. So that was one, which was nice. And you saying that about golf was also nice to hear again. So now it's getting. And then two was the nutrient value of the food we eat today and how I think the US has become subconsciously in other countries like it dependent on supplementing our mineral and nutrient deficiencies via pill or supplement or food product basically like we have and we seems like I wonder it made me wonder how much do we need food products at this point because our food supply nutrient level has been degraded so much because the soil quality has been degraded so much and some things are at like 90% from like their depression era nutrient levels like 1910 1920 testing of nutrient levels in these crops and then current testing of nutrient levels in these crops and
Oh,
it's
wow.
pew,
That's very interesting to think about for sure. Like
yeah.
if the broccoli you're eating doesn't have the nutrients that it had 20 years ago.
And then and then the other thing I know, and this isn't from him, but I know this and I've seen it, and this is something I think about often, and I don't hear people talk about it much, which makes me feel like an alarmist. But there are lots of animal studies that they've done to figure out like how to actually feed pets and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
to feed animals in labs and to keep them alive. And there's a lot of animal studies done on this, so you can look it up. And one of the things that you'll see in animal studies when they animals aren't getting quality nutrients over generations
Hmm.
is these typical metabolic syndrome issues that we're seeing in our current human population.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So what does that tell you? What's
Right.
happening right now? We're not getting the mix of nutrients we need on a regular enough basis over multiple generations at this point. We're already into the second or third generation of not getting it. And you wonder why we have a lot of these preventative health, metabolic syndrome, possibly even mental health disorders rising. And not just as the sole reason, but as a extremely large contributing factor.
That's pretty interesting. And I've heard this before. I have a little tidbit of information about this. So
We should get a
our
podcast right now.
the
Run
what
for your lives. No.
the lemons were our farmers from Missouri.
No
And
way. The lemons farmed?
the lemons farmed
They didn't farm what I think they farmed.
my and no, they don't farm lemons actually. And I think this is a and my dad was telling me about this problem, exactly what you're talking about. So the government when they subsidize corn in the I think 50s or 60s essentially made all these farms that you would just do one crop. And when all the farms started going to one crop instead of having, say, 10 or 20 or 30 different.
Rotating crops, basically, is
uh,
what before the monocrop era.
yeah, and I think from what I've heard, that was the biggest problem with soil degradation is that when they went down to one crop, that soil wasn't, it started losing its nutrients compared to now, if you have your own garden in your own yard, you should have as many different crops as you can. You should have all sorts of pollinator,
Biodiversity,
more
basically, is what you want.
biodiversity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
To make a healthy ecosystem, you need a large amount of biodiversity in that ecosystem and moving through that ecosystem.
Yep. And you'll hear this is a popular conversation in the meat world about some of the biodiverse farms out there.
Regenerative, I think, is the pop word right now. You hear about a lot of regenerative farming practices. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why people say that you should buy certain meats like from these farms because these meats have much more nutrients than other meats and other veggies coming from farms that aren't biodiverse. And so I think this is a big argument in the health world. And you're right, because how many people just go to the regular store and buy the cheapest stuff because everything's getting so expensive? It's the easiest choice to do this. A lot of times you
And you
don't
might
even
even honestly get more nutrients in some food products than you would in whole foods. Like
Yep.
some of the cheaper whole foods, honestly, that are out of shipped really far. I wonder
You
sometimes.
wonder, but
That's a different.
you're not telling people to go eat food products, right? Over
I
food.
know, I know. But I'm being devil's advocate for food products basically this whole time because I really just want to be devil's advocate for it. So don't take me completely seriously here. Honestly, I just know so many people are like the food products are the devil that I just want to advocate a little bit.
Okay.
Make me think a little bit different. But in the larger context of like where are you getting your nutrients from right now? Are you getting enough nutrients right now? All right, because if you don't get enough nutrients, one of the things you're going to see is you're going to see these weird cravings and an inability to regulate your metabolism.
Right. That's interesting. I've noticed for me when like my main thing is if I have a high protein meal early in the morning, which usually consists of a few eggs with a lot of egg white, I feel much better throughout the day. I feel stronger. I feel more full.
What kind of
Um,
eggs do you get, Josh?
Luckily, I get Eggland's Best if I get it from Food Lion or whatever. But our next door neighbor gives us eggs from their farm, from their
Yeah.
sister's farm, and
Do you notice a difference?
yeah, oh yes, I would say I
Sometimes
noticed
different times of the year, they might be
they
different.
are the biggest difference is what they look like. Like the eggs from the farm are like a dark gold yellow when I crack it open, like the yolk, compared to any of the eggs you get at the store are going to be a lighter yellow. And from what I've read, that has a lot of to do with the nutrients that are in it. I don't know if that's the truth though. Maybe you enlighten me more, but
The nice thing is if you get it from like a local source or somebody, you also know that they're not doing a lot with the feed, probably, and the eggs being artificially nutritionally raised.
have eggs on the farm.
No, but we have family members who have eggs, and we get eggs from them pretty often.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we're really lucky because we got like a little health food niche store down the road that we can get really good eggs from, too.
Oh,
But yeah, but because of it, I've become a little bit of an egg snob and like more yellow, less orange eggs. I much prefer like more orange eggs. I prefer eggs that have more like yolk to white ratio. I
hmm
notice now. Like I really don't like really cheap like Walmart giant XL eggs where the yolk is small and it's mostly egg whites.
But
Yeah,
what's the message you hear a lot about eggs are that egg whites are the protein and all that kind of stuff. And so that's the message you hear a lot
right.
online.
And we got a lot, and that's like an anti-nutrient message, you could say,
Right. It's only about the protein and not about any of the nutrients.
or an anti-micronutrient. We're probably more right now, probably as a society still understanding and grasping macronutrients, which is why we go through these phases with them and they're circular. Call
Mhm.
it something different, but it's still just kind of macronutrient cycling of some sort. And we haven't really figured it, we haven't really gotten to the micronutrient side that much. We're not talking about micronutrients that much. And it might be because it's too complex. At least macronutrients, you only got to worry about the big three, right?
Right.
But
Right.
micronutrients, you got, like, I don't know. I don't even know. 50, 60, who knows?
So bad experimenting, Mike.
It is. It is.
All right. We got anything else?
I think that's it, man. I just wanted to drop that bomb and carry on.
All right. Good. It's good talking to you.
Yes. Thank you for listening, everybody. Catch you on the next